It's Khalid and I again. I'm sorry for the delay. I had some mic issues, but it's all solved now. Thank you, Khalid, for coming. Um,
You're
did you
welcome.
have anything in particular to say about the events of this week?
Well, there's two little things. I think I'll start with the big thing, which is I'm preparing more for World War Three. I'm kind of surprised more people aren't, but they're kind of just watching World War Three as if it's something you just see on YouTube and it won't affect you. Or they're kind of, I think in the West, we're used to being passive and just thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, it won't affect me. But I think this one will affect everybody. Um, so I'm like this morning, I went to a sheep farm looking for basically ways of. I'm working on becoming self-reliant. What's the word? It's not self-reliant. So you don't need anything. So getting solar panels, sheep, milk, whatever, all that kind of stuff. Just setting myself up. What's that called when you don't depend on
Right.
anything? You're off the grid and other stuff.
Well, yes, living off
There's a
grid
phrase for
is
that.
about, I can't think of it, but I know what you mean. So will you be self-sufficient? Is that the word?
Self-sufficient, that's the one, yeah. Why are
Or
not, like, I
self-reliant?
talk to my brothers about it. Yeah, self-reliant, self-sufficient. Um, why are I like my other brothers are not that particularly interested, or they're still in like London mode, I think. Over here it's much easier. You can just turn up to any place, and there lots of people have got their own sheep. It's really common, so it's a lot easier. There's a lot more land, things are cheaper. But I'm still thinking of moving country because um it's kind of it's sort of like a desert, and it doesn't it's kind the country is not completely self-reliant in itself. So yeah, I'm working on that. Yeah. So I suppose the question
Well,
is,
I suppose
why are more people not concerned about what's happening down the line?
because it affects everyone. I mean, um, if it also affects China. It affects Australia. Where can you go that won't be affected by this? America is a global
Africa.
hegemon, and maybe you don't quite really get it
No,
that
I get that
there's nowhere
everybody's
to run
affected, but
anymore.
I feel like I feel like I get that there's a lot of problems coming down the line, especially with we're not going to have this. Maybe I'm wrong, but we're not going to have the same access to petrol, and so we're not going to have imports. There's a lot of problems that occur because of that, and so
Famine could be a prospect.
yeah. So why are people not reacting, or maybe maybe you know what? That's a common
Because
thing
they're
that
just so stupid. I've been talking to these
okay, that's
Christians.
also a solution. I think maybe
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
partly wrong
they
that there
just
probably are people
pray.
reacting, but not enough people.
They just
Sorry.
pray. They don't want to think. They just want to pray. I've been talking to, you just realize how bloody stupid they are. And you say, well,
Hmm.
what do you want to pray for? Oh, let's not talk about it. That's how they roll,
Hmm.
you know? And they
Yeah.
think, oh, if we're going to be if we're about to be blow up in the nuclear holocaust, we better be believing in Jesus because only Christians go to heaven, right? That's what they think.
Hmm.
We have to pray to Jesus in order to remain Christian, who are the only ones who get to heaven.
So
That's
maybe
why.
what you're saying is that this is not the first problem that's hitting civilization. Like there's the, population implosion problem, and people are like not really doing anything about it. They talk about it a little bit, but I think people become um yeah, there's just passive. They just
Yeah,
talk about
especially
maybe
the
talk about.
men, right? The men, the
Mm,
American husbands, they're actually terrified of saying anything on YouTube, and the YouTubers that might offend their wives. So they actually,
not even
they're obviously
pop.
concerned, but they won't
They're
say.
not yeah, not even their wives though. To be more accurate, like in the Western world, like being married is a rarity, and so like offending potential mates, temporary
Well, I'm
mates,
talking
not
about the
even girlfriends.
TLC.
Oh, TLC. Are they more married than the
Yeah, yeah,
average?
yeah. The middle class white Americans who see Christianity as their way of remaining adults. And I've seen how they work. So apart from Paul Vanderklay, who is their leader, right, with the biggest channel, somebody called Luke Thompson, who's a house husband, right? He's a house
Hmm.
husband, but he wants to think of himself as intellectual, and you like to use big words like Christian anarchism and annihilationism, and all these big theological words that he doesn't like talking about with me, because I actually want to know what he means, and he doesn't want to define his terms. And in order, I guess you will never lose your argument if you never define your terms. Um,
Yeah.
so um, so I go on his channel to annoy him, and he boots me. And I mean, you might find it. He spends an hour just talking nonsense, and then he lets his friends come on. And but anyway, the point is that they're moronic, they're stupid, they have to lie to themselves in order to remain Christian, right? And they
Hmm.
don't like me because I say all these things I say about Christianity. And Paul Vanderklay is an Islamophobe because he only gets his information about Muslims from Dominic Sandbrook, Douglas Murray, and Tom Holland, if you've heard of them.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
are, Islamophobes, and he doesn't get, any, and I'm the closest person to a Muslim that's allowed to approach them. You know, I think you did try to talk to them, some years ago, but you just gave up
Yeah.
because they just, their insufferable chit chat and their long windedness.
I don't know if I was consistent enough in about trying to get onto their channel. Maybe
I think you
I
spoke
don't
to
know.
Jacob a few times, but I mean,
I
Jacob
I've
actually,
spoke to all of them. I think. I mean, when I say all of them, the main guy, what's his name, Paul Vanderklay, whatever, been on his channel. Yeah.
yeah, on one of his Friday streams, I think,
Yeah.
briefly, but he's about to, jump on after.
But maybe you're right. It is kind of all over the place and doesn't really go anywhere. But
No, no, I
I
mean,
like to influence people a little bit. But that's about it. Yeah.
well, yes, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, they know what I'm, about, and so my latest thing is, well, what are your principles? It's like, huh? What do you mean? They actually don't get it. It's like, oh, Christian principles. It's to love God with all your heart and all your might and all your, and it's like, yeah, is that it? And love thy neighbor. Is that it? Yeah, yeah, that's it. And then,
Yeah.
when they see something they don't like, it, let us pray, and that's
Yeah.
it. Was it pray for what? No, don't. Let's not talk about it. Let us pray. It's
Yeah. Well, actually,
disgusting.
I'm
They're
gonna
grown
have a
men.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the whole values thing, which is what objective ethics was trying to talk about a little bit when I joined his stream, and now I've organised a stream to do with him this Wednesday coming on that topic. Basically, I the title on my channel that he's going to join is going to be "Is the West Lost and Dying?" which is another way of a short way of trying to point out like what are your values, what are you all about. And actually one thing I want to talk to you about, which you've done already before, but what are British values, like all these things that they claim to be losing in England. I think it's a systemic problem right across the West, that they don't really know what their values are, and they're losing because of it. They don't realize they're losing
Well, yeah,
everything because of it.
yeah, because they won't define their terms. So we've
Yeah.
discussed, something called fundamental British values. Have you looked it up, or do you remember teaching your teaching this thing called fundamental British
Um,
values?
Yeah, I have to
So
keep
nothing
remembering
but
because there's such
event.
fake things that it kind of it's just like you know when you're putting trash in your brain and you know there's no such
Tolerance,
thing as real
respect for
fundamental.
others.
Sorry,
Yeah. I mean, democracy, tolerance,
that kind of
respect
stuff.
for
Yeah,
others.
yeah,
Vague stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and um, I'll Christian, and then some of them, that the ones who are kind of agitating themselves into a froth of Islamophobia. We are a Christian country. What are those Muslims doing in Trafalgar Square? Frightening us by doing their prostrations with Sadiq Khan, and you know, how dare he be our mayor, and all that sort of thing. I guess you don't follow it, but
Mm.
that's kind of what they're saying. They've
No,
got
I've
to go.
briefly
They're alien
heard.
to.
I get these YouTube shorts coming up in my feed about LBC and people complaining how dare there be, prayers together in public or something. But the people who are
Yeah, I
complaining
mean,
about they
how
can't
dare they
really
show
articulate the problem.
themselves? Yeah, how dare they show? You know, and
Mm.
really
Yeah,
cut of them. Um, so
yeah,
and of course, if the government were trying to be helpful, they would facilitate discussion about religious and theological matters. But they don't. They actually want all these people to fight, so they don't. Get together and say, we should have a different kind of government with a different kind, with different values and different rules and different principles. But most of these morons,
yeah,
they all they know is turn up the hatred, turn up the fear, join some micro anti-immigration party, and that's how they roll. And they won't talk to anybody they don't like the sound of, whose ideas they don't quite like, because they
yeah.
can't have a civil discussion about anything in case they lose. And the best way of not losing the argument is not to ever discuss it with anybody who doesn't already, agree with them, you know?
Yeah, I think what they're suffering from in the West and in England is this kind of like they like the idea of Christianity only in the sense that it's kind of like a cool group to belong to and also to feel superior with. It's just very much like the Crusaders sort of mentality because Crusaders were not really religious, I don't think. They were just like pirates, they were just plundering and raping. Do you know what I mean? That was their aim. Um, so it's kind of like Christianity is just a label for them. So their conflict is that they don't really want to follow Christianity. They just want it as a club name.
Yeah,
Isn't that
because
the problem, I think?
Christians are the most powerful group. Apparently there are more Christians than there are Muslims. But I really
Okay.
actually doubt it, because they don't actually, you know, um, count them properly. I mean, I would just define a Christian as somebody who's actually been confirmed. Not anybody who says, "Oh, mum and dad are Christian, therefore I'm Christian." It's like, have you been confirmed? Are you over 18? Are you thinking of getting yourself confirmed? But
Or how about you go to church once a week or something? Because or something like that. You know what I mean? Like Muslims will go at least once a week, or I think something like that. Or you
yeah,
pray. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it actually doesn't mean anything. Even if you do go to church, you might be, just sending your children to Sunday school so you can get your kid to a good church school if you can't afford to pay, private school fees. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it
don't
doesn't
know
really
how many
mean
people
it.
do. I think it means something, doesn't it? Some action means something. Um, uh,
Well, it means you don't want to
yeah,
send your kid to the local comp, the local
yeah,
sing school comp. You know,
mm,
assuming if you have children, most people don't, which is why they don't care about education.
mm,
I
yeah.
mean,
I'm just, yeah, yeah. So I think that, but the thing is like convincing people to have values. And the difficulty with convincing people to have values, it feels like it doesn't have any effect.
Well, I
They,
mean,
do you
I've been
mean on the
asking Christians what
surface?
I've been asking Christians what Christian principles are, and they can't tell me. I mean, they can only say
Yeah.
love thy neighbor. I said, well, it's already in the Old Testament. You know,
Mm.
love God with all your might and all your heart and all your mind. It's like, well, that's in the Old Testament. You know, have you got anything new? No. You know, and and then
You know
they
what? I would be. You know what? Okay, I think see, I'm trying to help people,
but you won't
and
tell
I
them in so many words. You know, you can't beat
no,
about the bush with these people. They won't listen.
no. This is okay. This is how I would approach it differently. Let's say they say love thy neighbor is our
You're
value.
not
I
talking
would
to them,
say,
I am. You're not talking to them, I am.
maybe you're right. I don't know. Am I not talking to them? Who am I
Are
talking
you
to?
talking to anybody apart from me? You don't go to speaker's
Nathaniel.
corner anymore. You're in the wrong country.
No, but okay. Are you saying I'm not talking to anybody relevant? Or,
Are you talking
okay,
to any Christians?
yeah. Am I not talking to Christians? Nathaniel, Michael Jones, and hopefully some more that were picked up from that group with objective ethics. I've already
Well,
arranged to
they'll be
talk.
mostly, they'll be mostly atheists anyway. Okay,
Hmm.
Nathaniel, I mean, you know, he's really dumb, right? You know, it's like, what? If you want to flirt with Muslims, at least read their book. But there's always all these, you know, stupid excuses. And then I find him, you know, talking to some entity on YouTube. It's like, well, you could be reading the Quran, but you're just talking to this dumbo on YouTube and wasting your time. But you know, it's sort of like, okay, I'm whatever religion. I'm interested in Islam. I have to read the Quran, don't I? It's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. So the other day I asked Nathaniel, like part of our stream, and then afterwards I said, please read at least chapter one. And he said he was really busy, but he spent 3 minutes and he agrees with it. It's fine. It makes sense. Um, so this is how I approach it. Rather than calling them dumb, because that's not going to encourage them to do it. Maybe it might. But I treat everybody like my kids, which is sometimes I wish my kids would do better, but calling them dumb or slapping them around the head won't work. That might have worked in the past. I'm not sure if it worked now. So it's like, oh, okay, well done, you did that. And can you please do step 2, step 3? And a sort of very slowly but surely approach, just keep working on everybody. So that's it. Like, I don't think telling them they're dumb, especially adults, would actually
Well, no, I don't.
nudge them in the right direction.
Okay, I mean, okay, I don't exactly just, you know, go up to them and tell them, call them madame, but I do say, you know, what are Christian values, what are Christian principles, and they can't tell me. So it just means that you don't have an operating system. If you think you have a moral system, how can it operate if nobody knows what the rules are, or even what they're supposed to believe in? And Christians in particular are terrified of discussing what it means to be a Christian, because I guess, you know, they have some leftover memory of how dangerous it was when all of Europe were white and Christian and European, and you couldn't really, you know, you'd be afraid to discuss, you know, religion with
No,
anybody
I
in case
think they're
they denounce you as a heretic.
I think they're terrified of defining what Christian values are. Is the reason is because they're terrified of doing something. So I would, as soon as they say something like, "Oh, Christian values are love thy neighbor," I would say, "Fantastic. How are you going to put that into action?" Because if they did that, they would solve a million problems in their lives, right? Because right now, Westerners are dying out of loneliness. So if they could actually approach other people and be nice to people and put it into action, they'd actually solve a lot of their personal problems. And then they would actually have social skills, and then they would have the social skills to actually find somebody to get married, and lots of positive knock-on effects.
Well, I mean, it's not so okay. These people I'm talking about in TLC, they have jobs. They are, middle class people who are affluent and have been to college and have children even. But it's just the way they talk, Oh, I'm not going to look too closely, we'll just argue and then, we'll get upset with each other and we're no further. I actually have friends like that and she's not, even Christian. But up to a point I understand. You get into an argument with somebody about politics and nothing much has changed even after you've kissed and made up or never kissed and made up, right? So I can understand why people might not want to discuss politics and religion because you might break friendships and end relationships and that sort of thing. So I understand. So you would have thought, okay, I'm not going to actually offend anybody I see in real life. I'll go online and there'll be all these people who will be dying to discuss all these issues whom I can if they never talk to me, it doesn't matter because it's just somebody online that I've met. But actually, in a way, being online is kind of like having a family because if you're interested in a particular subject and you went into a slagging match with somebody else, you'll find yourself having to bump into each other again on somebody's stream. So in the end, you have to talk to them. So it's not that big a deal, but I think it's possibly the possibly Christian behavior. They fear each other too much to have a frank discussion about anything because they might end up accusing each other of stuff, either a
Mm.
heretic or a racist or a sexist or fascist, whatever. And and the other thing is they're not really sure of their identity enough to argue about it. Because there's so many different kinds of Christianity, right? And they haven't,
Mm.
even in their own minds, decided who won the wars of the Reformation, because there were all these Protestants and Catholics fighting each other for, you know, so many, over 100 years. And is there a winner or not? Have they even thought of it or not? You know, do they care enough about their Christianity to say, oh, this denomination won? Um, but they don't. I mean, they don't really even think about these things. You have to
Mm.
force them to, and they don't want to because it's too
Mm.
contentious.
Yeah. Um, do you want to check? Is tax insurance accessory says we're delayed? Is there actually? Who cares if it's a delay? Maybe is it when he says delayed? Does it mean we're out of sync? I don't know what
I
he
think
means.
we were late with our stream, and he was complaining we
Oh,
were
is that what
late.
he
I
means?
could tell
Delayed.
that.
Oh,
So
okay,
it's
cool. I
nice
get
that
it.
he noticed that we were late.
Yeah, and it's good that there's some comments. That means it's actually being played live. Actually, it's actually working, so that's good. So thanks for that feedback,
Mhm.
tax insurance man. Um, yeah. So I think the problem with values is that it's not like food or something. Like you don't feel like like if you don't have food, you're in big trouble immediately. You're starving, you're dying. But values is like, oh, values, they're just ideas. Doesn't matter if you have them or not. I think people don't understand the consequences of them, of not having values and sticking to values.
Well, I mean, okay, I think it's easy to say that, if you believe in God and if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim and you're supposed to, you claim to believe in God, what are your values? Your values would be obedience to the laws of God, right? If
Yeah.
you're, if you're a true believer, and then I guess if you're not Christian and you're a liberal, then you would value liberty, right? And if you're, um, I don't know, a nationalist, you would value nationalism, and then you would have to talk about what it means to be a nationalist, government in the national interest, and what all this
Hmm.
means. It depends on what your ideology is, right? You
Hmm.
could be a communism, you could be an atheist, and then we get these people who call themselves atheist, and what do they believe in? Well, do they have any principles? And I find that when I ask these people, that they seem to think I'm asking a very personal question, but I think it's because they haven't thought of it. Like, what sort of principles am I supposed to have? Other than to obey the law, right?
Yeah, so
And
people do seem to have these groups like atheist, and they're quite passionate about it, but the groups don't seem to have any practical steps related to it. And I think the reason is they all belong to one big group called liberals, or no, what's the word when you don't want to have values, you want to do whatever you want. Is that liberals?
anarchism, but
Yeah, but they
I
don't want to call
remember.
themselves anarchists, do they? They because that's sort of anti-government or something, and that actually involves work as well. Because maybe you have to go on a protest and smash something up, and that would be too much effort as well.
Yes, yes. Talking about anarchism, this Luke Thompson person calls himself
Mm.
a Christian anarchist. And so obviously I want to ask him questions about it. And his entire behavior is, I don't want to define my terms and I don't want to talk about it to you. And then he goes on about how nobody understands him. So, that's his thing. And he said, and the reason is because I'm too deep, I'm too clever. My
And it
ideas.
sounds cool to be a Christian anarchist, like a thing that nobody else is, because you're so clever that you're the only person who can figure out what a Christian anarchist is. But obviously, you don't want to talk about it because otherwise, you won't seem so clever once you try to explain it, sort of thing.
Yes, yes. So that's how they roll. And Paul van der Klerk kind of keeps them, under his umbrella because he's their leader, and he obviously has to manage them and be nice to them and not tell them they're talking rubbish. So they keep coming. This is what he
Yeah.
does, and then there are no Muslims there because it's hostile territory. Because even Muslims have so many hours in the day, and they don't want to listen to all that nonsense. Apart from me, who are keeping them under observation to kind of work them out psychologically. Why they
Mm.
behave like that. You know,
Yeah. You're doing a
and
good job summarizing what's happening there, um, in that world, I guess. Maybe it's a bit dull because they're just, you know, purposely just talking about nothing for ages. Um, and so yeah, maybe you're right. It's not that motivating to be in a group that doesn't really want to resolve or achieve anything other than socialize. That's really what it's
yeah,
about.
I get this. Oh, why did you tell us about your personal life, about the difficulties you've overcome? And I'm just saying, you're my difficulty. I'm just trying to get you to, understand what I'm saying, and you keep pretending not to understand. Because my thing is, well, since you're Christian, you will be familiar with the Ten Commandments, and you will know that God forbade idolatry, and you know that Jews and Muslims think the Trinity is idolatry. Don't you care? Because it would have, an effect. I mean, on your next life. If you die and you meet God, and then you realize He's not Jesus, so it means you're going to hell. You know, don't you care? And the answer is no. I don't care. I just want to hang out with these other Christians.
Yeah, maybe the problem, I don't know if you missed it or something, but they're not really Christians. They're just Christian by name because they want to be in a club. So maybe treat them like atheists and say, okay, they definitely don't care about the afterlife or what God thinks of them. So that's a question that doesn't make sense to them, really, deep down, if they're honest. So what they really care about is how is their belief system, whatever they imagine, value, how is that going to translate into something material and practical in this life? I think that's what they're really interested in, like getting married or something. But you say these people are
Well, they are
married.
married. They're going along to get along, and I think a lot of these, they're mostly men because men need to talk about these things, and women just, maybe they listen to their husband's YouTube channel once in a while to check up on them, that they're not, saying anything too dangerous. And that's it. And I'm saying to these American husbands, you actually, you won't get to the point because you're afraid your wife will understand. And then you'll be in trouble and she'll be angry with you and she might divorce you under the rules of no fault divorce, and you don't want that. And that's why you can't get to the point. And you can't have,
Mm.
honest discussions about anything, because a lot of it is, of course, they don't want to admit that they've been force-fed lies since the fourth century. They don't want to admit that Christianity is idolatry and they're going to hell if God exists. And they don't want to admit that they don't really believe in God, that God even exists to punish anyone for anything. And then the most important thing that they want is, to get through this life, to get to the end of the month and pay the bills. And things will get more difficult for them. And of course, they won't think of government or government policy. And some of them, already blame the Jews and become Orthodox Christians because.
You know what I'm trying to work out, and maybe you can explain this to me, right? That it's a good thing that some of these people have got married, right? What is it that distinguishes them? What have they got right that a huge number of the younger people, whatever, in the West are struggling with, which is getting into a relationship? Are these people older? How old are they? Because I
Okay.
think I'm fake. Yeah.
Okay.
What have they got right?
These the TLC is middle America, middle age. Some of them, two of them yesterday were worried about their sons going to university.
Okay.
Because that would mean the end of all that careful Christian upbringing. Because their son might take drugs, get some girl pregnant, whatever, and,
Hmm.
and they're obviously concerned about that.
So that what you trying to tell me that's the age must be about 40-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what have they got right that many other people, I would say particularly atheists, are not getting right? How have they got themselves married, for example?
Well, I guess they managed to get married and they stayed married, which is it's an
What did
achievement.
they do differently? Because loads of people are not doing that. They can't achieve that. You know that the stat that 18 to 13-year-olds, the 50% of them are not even in relationships. And generally, I think it's just getting worse and worse. Like relationships are not even lasting. What have they got right? I think we should. It's not a bad thing to figure that one out.
Well, I'm guessing that some people still marry and some people still stay together, and they're one of the lucky ones, which is why they are in the TLC, the Christian Americans who think they've sort of made it. Because they are a demographic. They're not trailer trash. They come from some
Hmm.
kind of middle class, affluent background, and want to, stay that way.
Right.
I guess they just can't see themselves hanging out with Muslims in mosques, and mixing, their culture with low status immigrant culture. They just can't see
Hmm.
that. I think they would rather die. So, we'll have to, accept that they have, middle class, sensibilities that doesn't involve, hanging out with Muslims in mosques.
Okay, cool. So they've achieved some good stuff, which is they got into long-term relationships. Good for them. What is it that they're missing that they still need to? What do you think they're still missing?
Well, I think that they're worried about losing their adult children to the culture, which is why,
Okay.
with their son going to university, you know, so on the one hand, they think, he's a boy. On the other hand, he might get some, take drugs and, have his mind destroyed by the indoctrination centers at his university.
So they're missing a community and direction in the long term to maintain their legacy, which is their children.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, you could be Jewish or Chinese or Muslim, and you have your son about to go to university. You might have, some anxiety about the kind of people that he's going to meet and what he's going to do. So, it's not specifically Christian, but I'm saying it's their way of talking. They just cannot ask obvious questions. They don't even understand, simple questions like, um, even little jokes like, "Do you have any principles you'd like to declare?" Is there something you always do or never do? Or, that's what I mean by principles. I think you
Hmm.
can easily, understand. I mean, Muslims can say, "I have the principle of praying 5 times daily and avoiding pork and not going into casinos or pubs, something that trips off the tongue like that." But these Christians, they have nothing.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
Paul van der Clay panders to them. That's the thing. He could. Okay, I'm just so annoyed that he always talks to these, kind of white nationalist types. Um, so recent. I don't know. Have you heard of Pete Hegseth,
Yeah.
the War Secretary?
Yeah.
And he's got these tattooed arms that
Yeah.
say Deus Vult. And then anyway, so Paul Van der Clay is talking to this Orthobro with all these Pete Hegseth tattoos,
What is he
talking
called? A what bro? A what bro?
Orthobro. It's what these white nationalist types call themselves when they convert to Orthodox Christianity,
Oh,
because
okay.
because Lutheranism is not too not right wing enough. It's quite liberal now. Catholicism is a bit effete, and they like Orthodox Christianity because it's kind of exotic. It's Russian. It's Putin's Christianity, and they have this saint called John Chrysostom who really hates Jews and is and doesn't support Zionism, because what they can't stand about Protestant Christianity is its Zionism, because
Hmm.
they hate Jews, right? They hate Jews, but then they also hate their own, Protestant religion, because it's all about Christian Zionism. We have to protect the Jews and convert them to
Cool. So this
Christianity.
ortho bro, which is, I think it's a step in the right direction. What's wrong with what he's doing? Was he doing wrong or something?
Well, okay, Paul van der Clay has said he would, talk to me, but he's
Mm-hmm.
always talking to these, endless queues of, Christian mediocrities, because he'd
Okay.
rather do anything than talk to me. But he sort of, thinks it would be fun to talk to me and blah, blah, blah. And I guess he never will. I mean, it's just, his teasers, because this is what he calls, being a YouTuber. You send out, a teaser that something is about to happen, that,
Hmm.
people should, subscribe and maybe pay, to view before the others, and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Okay. So these ortho bros, are they, do they turn actual orthodox, like, do they practice Christianity suddenly then?
Well,
In
they do.
reality,
I
or is
mean,
it just a label?
um, I think it started with somebody called Rouge V. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's um, he was leading a kind of movement against feminism, and then they kind of crushed him. His mother is Orthodox Christian, and so he just retired from politics, and he goes, he attends church regularly. He even said that the average age of the congregation is 50. So he won't be meeting any young women of childbearing age, and maybe he's not interested
Hmm.
anymore. So Orthodox Christianity is, it's like unexplored territory. It's still mysterious, but still ancient, and it's got kind of strict ideas, and obviously an ancient tradition which impresses these Americans, right? Because
Hmm.
uh, I know this Protestant American who said, "I'm thinking of Catholicism because it's so old, and I don't like getting my communion wine in a plastic cup."
Hmm.
So it's to do with the aesthetics as well, the building and the community and whatnot. So it's like a kind of a
So if
market
you
of
go to an
Christianity.
Orthodox church, Russian type, whatever. How does your cup look like? Is it like metal or something?
I have been to a um, Anglican service, and they have the chalice, which is where the communion wine is, and what
Oh
they
yeah,
used
of
to do all
course.
those
Yeah,
years
of course.
ago, yeah. So everybody takes a sip from it, and they wipe it, after everyone has taken a sip, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
But it's a kind of ancient chalice. It's a chalice, for God's
yeah,
sake.
yeah,
So it looks old, and it might be magic, I suppose, if you want to think of it like that.
yeah.
But I guess they started serving it in plastic cups, which
Because
it's
it's more
not ancient.
hygienic.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's a lot to do with culture and aesthetics as well, because people just think, oh, what a wonderful show! I must become Catholic,
yeah.
and uh, and, and
I get that. People like to be part of something big and historical and deep and lasting. I get that. Like that's Islam. But Islam is just more genuine. It doesn't have this kind of fakeness about it. It's like, yeah, you just go to a mosque that's 1,500. Go to the Kaaba, you know, that's 1,500 years ago, and it's actually genuine. You should do something. It's not just pretending.
well,
Um,
I mean, the thing about Islam is that the prayer, I guess on correct me if I'm wrong, but you just go and do your prostrations on Friday when you want to be with other Muslims, and then you listen to the sermon, and then off you go. It's a very short thing, but the main thing is to be with your fellow Muslims and listen to the sermon from the Imam, right? Given from the minbar, which I like to think is a mini bar, but so it's a very short service. But if you go
I
to
think 1 hour usually. I think. Oh no, no, actually, sorry. Is it? I don't know. But the whole thing's about an hour, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, the whole process, I mean, maybe 20 minutes for the sermon, or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
but but for these old churches, I mean, old rituals, I mean, it takes a long time because the ritual is very elaborate. You have to sit there, stand up, sing the hymn, and then there's a
Ah,
procession, and then the Eucharist, and the communion wine, people queuing up to go. It takes a while, right?
yeah.
And it's a different kind of service. You can choose, you can go to evensong, which is a different kind of service, to morning service, and that sort of thing. But it's like a show. That is the thing. So
Hmm.
and the whole idea, came from, Roman Catholicism, because the Romans knew how to keep the people entertained with their bread and circuses, and even the Jews would say, wow, these Gentiles, these Christians, they sure know how to put on a show, you know.
Yeah,
It is a
yeah.
show.
Is it the? Are they? Who's the one? Is it like a particular country in Spain or something where they've got like this lantern swinging across the whole church and the incense and the lantern, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Oh, the smells and bells, yes, the incense
Yeah.
would be, part of the thing, and you smell it and you hear the music. I mean, the music can be great, you know, um, because
Where is that Orthodox?
well, I mean, it's all kinds, really. I mean,
Okay.
it is a place for musical performance, isn't it?
Yeah, so it does impress people. Like in Hollywood movies, they put that kind of stuff. Like, oh, look, it's so cool. Um, but maybe it wears like the fakeness of it wears thin after a while if you have to do it every single time. Like you can just turn up to one church, go, oh, that was cool, that was really cool. I almost got hit by the swinging incense going across the church. But then if you see it every day, it's a bit boring, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's so elaborate that if your child were asked to do a reading every now and then, it would be considered, you know, um, high status to be asked to do a reading than not do a reading, right? And then if your son were asked to be one of the procession and dressing up in their, the vestments and carrying the banner, going up the aisle to, you know, to the um, I forget
Yeah,
now. I
the
mean, to the middle
pew.
of
I don't know.
church.
No.
I
Yeah, it
mean,
was
have you ever
pew.
been to one of those services?
I've been to churches, but not. But no, I can't remember any particular long service. No, I think I just turned up and sat through a little bit. Like I
Mm.
might be invited by, but I don't think nothing special. I think I went to an ordinary, very ordinary church. I've been to crazy ones where lots of black people are just going crazy and singing and fainting and stuff like that, and
Oh,
people
that
removing
would
the
be the
ghost from
Pentecostalists. Mm.
that those ones. Yeah, those kind of
Mhm.
things. Just a variety, I guess. But
Yeah, I mean,
no,
there's so
yeah.
many kinds of Christianity depending on what you like. You know, you want a good show, you want good music, you like old buildings,
So how
or
comes
you want the world
Muslims
on
don't
tour.
need? How comes Muslims don't need a show? Like we don't have pictures, we don't have anything, but we like going to the mosque more than Christians do, and they have a show. They have all sorts of crazy, cool things happening. I say cool. I'm just trying to be nice, but like the ghost taken out of them or something.
Hmm.
What do
Oh,
you think's going
exorcism.
on there?
Oh, exorcism. I've seen imams do perform exorcisms, but you know, maybe
But
as
they're
a
kind of a minority, isn't it? Like, oh, you got the jinn inside you, or something.
I think rabbis are supposed to do that too. I guess in the olden days, these rabbis, these priests, were kind of psychotherapists, right? So maybe, you know, somebody's really troubled and they really need to
No,
feel
but
that.
my point is that we don't, as Muslims, we don't really need that kind of show. In fact, I think it would put more Muslims off. Like, what is this BS? We know there's no jinn or this ghost. There's no ghost in this guy. It's just got a mental problem. Just deal with your mental problem, isn't it? Like, how come Muslims don't need that? Or maybe they
Because
do. I
you
don't
need
know. I don't
your
think they do.
ritual. Maybe your five times prayer is kind of centers you because it's the equivalent of me time, right? If you can
Yeah.
think of it as a kind of, you know, coffee break or a cigarette break or, you know, tea break
Hmm.
kind of thing. So it's your me time to, you know, think of God and have a bit of rest from your, you know, work day or something.
Yeah. And it's actually a together type as well, because part of when you're a Muslim, we're told if there's any gap between people, like you have to have shoulder to shoulder, or some people do feet to feet or something, it's a community type time. So they said, oh, sorry, I didn't complete my sentence. It's like if you do have a gap, like you're not shoulder to shoulder or feet to feet or something, we're told the devil is between you. Like we really give importance to a sort of togetherness, so you feel connected physically. I think in the West people lack touch between each other, and you pray together in, what's that thing, like the Texas dance, in sequence, not in sequence,
Square
together.
dance?
It's the square dance thing. People love that. What is that called when you do everything together? In synchronous, in synchro, whatever.
I don't
So in,
know.
in like people love, like, why do people like square dancing? What's so cool about it? Even though it's not very cool dancing, why do they
Well, I mean,
love
they
it?
enjoy, you know, the music, the rhythm, you know, just
But square dancing is about doing. It's not just the music. It's actually quite dull music, right? I think it's actually doing it all together, isn't it?
mhm, mhm.
There's
The
something
holding
human
hands
being.
and the body
Yeah,
contact.
or I'm not. Yeah, I'm not even sure. Does square dancing involve holding hand? Because I think you kind of have your own space. I'm not an expert in it, but you just
Mhm.
do everything together. So my point is, um, there's touching, being together, doing everything together, like in being synchronized. That's probably the word. Um, and human beings need that. Like human beings don't just need food and entertainment. They need connection with God. That's very important, like you said, but also connection with each other. And that connection is shown in a subtle way by doing everything together. And oh, we all know what to do, sort of thing. There was a YouTube short that I watched recently with a white lady, white teacher, crying, having just watched kids, grade fivers or something in America, say, "Oh, I want to pray. at school, and she let them in her classroom, and she just really enjoyed watching them in synchronized doing stuff together. That's magical for her. She's 50 something or 60 something, right?
You mean
And
Muslim?
yeah, sorry.
Muslim?
Yeah, so the Muslims during Ramadan, some kids in year five, them was like 10 years old or 11 years old. I'm not even sure how old, right? Not very old. And she said, teacher, can I use your prayer room, so your classroom to pray in? Because we just don't have a space. The usual teacher hasn't given, is away or something. And she was literally crying watching these kids pray. What
Mhm.
do you think would make her cry? I think it's just the beauty of somehow knowing what they're supposed to be doing, connecting to something higher, doing something more meaningful than the average kid, or something powerful about it. Do you think there's something powerful about the way Muslims
Doing
pray?
something together as a group, yeah. Uh,
Hmm.
either pray together, and I know these Americans, they used to do something called the Pledge of Allegiance, which is basically, standing, you know, when the flag was being raised and doing this kind of
They
salute
still do
thing.
that in Jordan, by the way. They sing every morning to the national anthems. Kind of nice, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So there would be some song that children would remember, or some ritual they would do, and this was what I remember doing too. But in the West, all these morning rituals of prayer in school has been completely kicked out, right? In fact,
Yeah.
objective ethics said we don't even do this thing anymore, the Pledge of Allegiance, because I was discussing that with I think Vincent, because the Pledge of Allegiance was actually a very political subject, because there was a time when people thought it resembled the Nazi salute. And the
Oh,
wording of it, and one nation under God, and
how is the
indivisible.
what kind of salute do they do in the Allegiance Pledge?
Um, they
They don't
they
do that, do they?
no no
Never.
they kind of um they raise their hand towards a flag and then put it on their heart and then lower it again, something like that. Yeah,
So that gets too close to that. Is that what their problem is? I think that's a bit silly.
yeah,
That'll be the Nazi one, and that would be just the ordinary one.
yeah.
That's
and, and,
silly.
and then the idea was to put their right hand on their heart, and then it goes
Hmm.
down on the side again. But now I guess it's easier for them not to even do it, which is why you have so much disorder, really, because these group activities are important to remind the group that they are a group, and of
Yeah.
course the leftists and have basically said that
I
that's
think, to
over.
summarize, because I have to go, I think what's happening is that, because I was asking in the beginning, why don't people realize that values matter? And what happens is, some people at some point through great difficulty realize, generations before, values do matter. And then they learn those values, and then society benefits. And then when you get benefit from them, and people just follow the values without thinking, after a while they stop following them because they think they don't matter, and they don't realize all of society depends on those values. And then they lose those values, society breaks down, and then they start thinking again through that whole cycle. Oh, why is society breaking down? Oh, it looks like values do matter. So they're just going through the cycle. What do you think?
Yes, yes, sadly. And
Hmm.
I'm saying that's because America doesn't have a proper religion,
Yeah.
because Americans, they don't. I mean, it's actually they're not supposed to establish a religion,
Yeah.
but
We got to
there
change
is a
that
way
then, I
around that.
guess.
Pardon?
So that's the plan, isn't it? We're gonna change that. You're gonna call it secular Quranism. I think it would probably become Muslim, but it would take maybe a decade. I don't
A
know.
few,
Who knows?
a generation or two,
Oh, hope
because I'm
not.
saying,
Yeah,
well, we don't know, but I mean, if you say,
yeah.
you have to kind of be relaxed about it, really. But
Hmm.
yeah, I have all these plans, and I would have thought. they might want to shoot them down a bit, like, well, what is this silly idea? That kind of thing. But
I have to
no, just
go.
okay. Thank you
I
for
must
coming.
go. Thank
Okay,
you.
have a good
Take care.
lesson.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, now I will try to sum up what I thought was being said about the problems of not having a group ritual, which is actually the last thing we were talking about. So, um, we need to know if we are a member of a group, what the purpose of that group, the origin of that group, and then there has to be, a name for the group, and then a reason for that group, and um, a statement of beliefs and values and rules for that group. And this is basically religion, isn't it? And even if you can't think of a good reason for your group to exist, well, you could raise its sights. You could, and even if you don't know a lot of answers to a lot of questions, you could just maybe stay in existence so you can think of better things, and there will be time for it to take place. But of course, nobody thinks of these things because basically they 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 expect to be spoon fed. I think that they're so used to their welfare state, and they're used to being told what to do, and they're just not capable of independent thought. And for those who have a leader, they're just waiting for the leader to do stuff. And I'm saying, what if the leader is corrupt? What if the leader is a panderer? What if the leader is afraid of civil political discourse? And what if the leader just wants to be the leader for the sake of being a leader? Or he hopes to benefit from his position as leader of a particular religion, and he doesn't fancy changing his religion when he's about to retire. He's or his wife might be saying, well, at this time of our lives, it's not up to us to take risks on newfangled ideas. We may not really believe in Christianity, dear, but we should have a care about our pensions and our income, and it's just safer to stay with Christianity. But I suppose if I did have the chance to speak to him, I would say, you can be a Christian actually and be a secular Quranist. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because secular Quranism does not care what religion you are. You could be a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Jew. You just have to find the package of principles and laws that I propose tolerable or maybe even attractive, and then you can support it. And Americans are the best group because their country is a global hegemon, and it is the one causing all these problems in the world with a very evil government, with a very evil foreign policy, and that clearly doesn't care about them. And I have identified the problem, and it is a problem of failing to read George Washington's farewell speech. And when I point out to them that a lot of the answers to their problem can be traced back to to their successive governments, ignoring the advice of George Washington, I get no response. I get no interest in wanting to read Washington's farewell speech. It's almost as if his words have no meaning, or Americans do not know the meaning of the words in his farewell speech, or if they do, they just don't care, because maybe they don't think it's their place to say these things, or even if it is their place, it's too much trouble, isn't it, Paul Vanderklay? It's too much trouble. It's too controversial. The missus might not approve. The flock might be upset. And where would you be? So it's just safer to pander to their Islamophobia by getting your news and information about Muslims exclusively from Islamophobes, because that's how they want to roll. And even though many of them are suffering from Dunning-Kruger, I think. I mean, fancy not knowing what principles are, or being totally unable to discuss them, and lacking the self-awareness to know that Christianity just tells you not to think. And when you're anxious, instead of thinking your way around the problem, you just pray. And when somebody asks you what you're praying for, you won't say, because you're afraid of controversy. So this has turned adult men into morons, cowards, hypocrites, and frankly, people who ought to know better but want to pretend that they don't. And this is what Christianity has done to them. So, in short, the people who are attracted to Christianity are either credulous morons or people who just wish to continue deriving an income from the brand of Jesus, rather than, honest, straight-talking men who want to solve problems through legal or moral reasoning. So, and this means, sadly, that they will always prefer mediocrity, mendacity, chicanery, charlatanry to straight talking people like me. So as Jesus, did Jesus say there are none so blind as those who refuse to see, nor any so deaf as those who will not hear? Was it Jesus who said that? I am under the impression that willful blindness. Let's see if I can find the correct word for verse. Willful blindness. It's in the book of John, apparently, 39:41. Let me find the exact words for you. Isn't it sad? You actually have a map or an instruction manual and you just refuse to read it. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who will see become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin, but now Now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. That's a good one, isn't it? So, any Christian who has been told, any Christian who has been told that Christianity is idolatry, has been put on notice that Christianity is idolatry, and therefore, if he wishes to remain willfully blind, it will be taken into account. His willful blindness will be taken into account. Hello, Teo. Waiting for you to arrive. Oh, has he gone? Oh, here he is.
Oh, Claire, what are you going on about today?
Well, you know, my usual thing. You must have heard some of it. Did you hear Khalid?
No, I missed it. I was talking to someone else before I saw you were
Yeah.
live with Khaled. But I skipped back a little bit. He was talking about incense, and then I was like, you know what? Let me just go forward,
Yeah,
see what Claire's ready
for
for.
about an hour.
Ranting about Christianity, I'm sure.
Well, just the inability for us to think straight. They're not really interested in talking about anything really. I mean, even when they pray, you ask them, "What are you praying for?" "Oh, nothing, not nothing really." You know, just for the best.
That's a disingenuous and straw man
Well, actually, I'm
understanding of
thinking of Ron
Christian faith.
Copperman, who was praying for the Iranians. So I was saying, you praying for regime change, and and then he went, "Oh no, no, I'm not praying for anything. I don't want to get political." He's a
So
Jew, isn't he? It's so sad.
he's a Jewish Christian, yes. Praise God. So you wish
Yeah.
Christians were more well, explicit in their political interests because you
Um,
see Christianity as a
well,
political
PLC
tool.
people that they're terrified of discussing politics. So, but that I think is because they're middle class and they think, oh, it's dangerous to say stuff, so we won't say anything, and we'll beat around the bush forever, because it's safer, because we don't really want to, people to understand what we're really thinking. But it does come out from time to time, especially amongst the younger set, like Joseph, who's obviously a white nationalist.
That's hilarious. So which other community do you pay attention to, and do they talk about things, and how do they do it better than we do?
I'm sorry, you're roboting a bit.
The question is,
Could you say it again?
yeah, no, I don't know if my mic is properly connected, but you're saying that there's a cowardness to the way TLC avoid or engage politics. And the question is, which other online communities do you pay attention to, and how do they engage with politics better than the TLC? Is it just talking about it and giving our takes about the war? Is that what you're looking for? What is it
Yes, yes.
that
So,
you think is better?
um, so I guess I prefer the channels that don't have the chit chat, but I know the TLC is all about chit chat and status flaunting and that kind of thing. Um, so, I suppose it's interesting psychologically that they want to show off and talk about their children and their you know jobs and whatever. But I think really they don't want. I mean, somebody has suggested to me that some people are so lonely that they don't even think that their online friends are disposable. Because this was something Chris was saying, that he obviously has people in real life that he values and maybe he doesn't want to offend, but online people are more disposable, and this was something Chad also said. But there are obviously some people who are so protective of what little they have that they don't want to offend anyone, even if it's just some avatar that they met online, attached to a voice. I mean, I think the internet is where you test your ideas, because it's so easy to find somebody interested in your subject, even though they won't agree with you. But the whole point is that they don't agree with you, and you can argue about it.
Where do you test your ideas? You're saying the TLC refused to engage you on your ideas. Where do you go to test them? That's the question.
I'm so sorry, Teo. I really couldn't make anything out of that.
That's
It's really
unfortunate.
bad.
Let's try this. I'll be right back.
Please ask your question again. No, I can't hear anything at all. Oh, he's muted himself anyway. Let me try and remember what I thought he said. I can't remember what I thought he said. Something about the TLC and how they talk about stuff. I mean, obviously they don't talk about, they're not all the same. But there are people who just say, well, there's no point talking about these things. I mean, actually, I have friends who say, there's no point talking about these things. People just get all hot under the collar, and, the world hasn't changed, even though, you got hot under the collar, you broke your friendship with somebody who didn't agree with you. So what's the point? Some people, I know a friend who said that. But I think ultimately all these arguments are about establishing not so much what the other person thinks, but what you think. What's non-negotiable for you.
Okay, how do I sound?
Oh, much better.
Oh, good. Yes, I forgot what I was actually asking, but as I was listening to you continue, I've got a similar but different question, I think, which is that I'm trying to engage with your ideas about the best way, the type of conversation that you would like to have. Because all I've heard you complain about so far is the type of conversation you wouldn't like to have, which is just talking for talking's sake. How's your mom? Small talk stuff. And you would like people to engage you better on political conversation.
Well, yes, particularly as Americans, but yeah, I guess it's Paul van der Klee really that I'm kind of after, because I know he's a graduate in history. He has an interest in. Actually, he doesn't have an interest in theology. He doesn't want to talk about the Trinity.
Is it not? Is it a fair thing to say that you're interested in Paul van der Klee, particularly because him not engaging you proves your thesis about Christianity and Christian men more particularly?
Well,
Because
he sort of hinted he would engage with me, and then he would have. I think Nathan Jacobs was what took the biscuit for me, with his Pete Hegseth white nationalist arms, and then he didn't even say anything.
Okay, so is it Paul van der Klee or is it Nathan Jacobs, or Paul van der Klee's platforming with Nathan Jacobs?
Okay, I'm not particularly impressed with his Christian interviewees. and they don't say anything much, I don't think. And I was also noticed that Paul van der Klee only gets his information about Islam and Muslims from Islamophobes like Douglas Murray, Dominic
Would you
Sandbrook, and
like
Tom
this is
Holland.
what this like you're very good at telling me what you don't like. I'm trying to understand what you would prefer. So who should they get his
I would like him to
information from?
interview me. I've already said he can call me a rando if he wants, but but I think if you believe in God, you do not believe that anything is ever random. But if he wants to lower my status and call me a rando, all right then.
Okay, so this is all just a ploy to try to get an interview with Paul van der Klee.
Well, he did already say that before.
And what would you like to talk to him about? Educate him on Islam and
Well, I mean, he does say a lot of things about Islam and me, and equating me with Nathan Ormond. Just because, I share the same island. I mean, I guess he didn't say, Teo and Nathan, they live in England and therefore they're the same. But he did say that about me, so that was a bit annoying.
do you not see just how self-indulgent all of this seems? So it's basically you trying to protect your reputation online and don't want to be associated with people such as Nathan Altman. You don't like the fact that it's platforming people such as Nathan Jacobs instead of someone like Claire. You don't like the fact that he's not interviewed you yet. And I'm sure after the interview, just like your conversation with Neil, there'll be reasons to complain afterwards. So why are you spending so much time with people that don't get you? Like which community? This was the question I was asking. Which community do you have engagement with that actually you think is the right way to engage on the internet?
Well, I mean, to be fair to them, they don't want my legal solution of secular Quranism, do they? I mean, the white nationalist types, I mean, they dedicate their activity to showing hatred of Jews and Muslims and non-whites, and I've noticed that they kind of smartened up and said, we're not going to call ourselves white nationalists anymore, we're going to call ourselves Christian nationalists. And then I noticed Paul van der Klee, saying blah 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 blah, Christian nationalism, da 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 da, Christian, so he's realized that it's a subject of interest.
Say more about the da 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 da. What's Paul van der Klee's thoughts on Christian nationalism? And I'm asking to see whether or not you've actually listened to what he says about it, or you've just got.
I do listen, actually. So he's saying it could never exist in America because there isn't a Church of America, and if there were a Church of America, it would have to be the church that the current president currently attends.
Yeah.
And Christianity is now represented by Paula White because she's the spiritual advisor of Donald Trump.
I think his point is that Christian nationalism has always existed in America, and it couldn't exist in the way that it exists in Britain, in America. But inherently, you can't. I mean, he believes that the Tom Holland thesis that everything, all of it comes down from Christianity. Everything the West has to offer, particularly in the way it's structured. It's all either Christian or reaction to Christian.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned reaction against Christianity, because what Tom Holland says was that liberalism is like Christianity or vice versa. And it's clear that liberalism was a reaction against the oppressive totalitarianism of absolute monarchy supported by Christianity. So, but I don't think Westerners understand how liberalism was really meant to be the replacement religion of Christianity. But this distinction was never properly noted. So that's why people still think, oh, well, you know, Western values is Christianity and liberalism, like you know, that they could coexist. But obviously, you know, the church now basically does rubber stamps whatever the government wants it to approve of, you know. And
No,
this is, you know, really the problem of Christianity, because all it does is rubber stamp what the government of the day wants it to do, however corrupt it is.
your war against Christianity is it's only funny to me because I think it's going to end up with you converting to a Christian and being a Christian apologist, which would be hilarious. But outside of that, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Why not?
Well, mainly because you're so against it that you basically think Christianity is dead. That was when I first met you. That was your first you and Khaled's argument was, "Oh, Christianity is dead," and um, the liberalism that's replaced it is corrupt and ungodly. Is that correct so far?
Yes, I'm saying that Christianity is so kaput that its replacement is also now kaput.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
that's
So
my thesis.
yeah, I've been listening to you for a long time, Claire. And then despite the fact that there are people converting because they think liberalism is kaput, as you put it, back to Christianity, you still think you don't recognize that as, oh, there's anything good about Christianity. It's like, oh no, actually that's not happening. Christianity is still dead, despite the fact that people converting, and you've spoken to many of them. And you've also spoken to people that never left, that will always remain Christian, the liberal culture they live in. And instead of recognizing that they're still into this thing that you think in the thesis is called, instead of investing holding onto it, or what is they holding onto, you're just assuming that, oh no, it's kaput, it's fine. This Christians don't exist. That if they do, they're just how did you put it earlier in the stream? Something like dumb or stupid.
Hypocrites and atheists, nihilists, atheists and nihilists. They don't really believe in the afterlife. They don't really believe God exists to punish them for anything, or they, you know, stop their idolatry, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so that's why I said what I said. It's because despite the evidence against you, despite you engaging people that are people whose existence is evidence against your thesis, you just dismiss them as delusional.
Oh yes,
Or,
yes, I do. And I try to give them every opportunity, like, well, what are your principles? And it's like, huh? What do you mean? Love thy neighbor. That's it, right? That's it. And of course they don't love their neighbor, and then they think we're all going to hell unless we believe in Jesus. So that stops them from ever thinking properly, right? That's why they can't think,
yeah,
because they know
and
saying anything gets them into
the
trouble.
you see why this makes you a bad faith comment such that you would be put in categories similar to Nathan Ullman by Christians, because you're starting from the starting point of the person I'm talking to is delusional, that and anything they tell me is a lie. How can you have a
But
conversation?
prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
How can they prove you wrong when your starting point is anything they tell me is a lie?
No, I'm prepared to listen.
What would
And the most important thing is,
would be-
why don't you care that Christianity is idolatry? And then you can say, oh, but it's not idolatry. And then I can ask you, why don't you think it's idolatry to worship a man? Let's go there, then, Teo.
yeah, and then we'll be back to Trinity, which you're already saying is idolatry. So it's just a circular conversation about how I think Christianity is true and you think Christianity is not. That's where
Well,
that
you're not the
goes.
only Christian I've been, I've conversed with. I mean, I've noticed that Paul Vanderklay doesn't really want to talk about the Trinity. I think his estuary protocols are there to give him control of the situation, so that when people get together, it's like, oh, let's all get together and have a good old natter, and it's like, but you can't talk about the Trinity because that's off the menu. Right? I mean, that's his game. He doesn't
Many
want to
people,
defend it
many
because he knows
people
he
have
can't.
spoken. Okay, so I was speaking to Ethan earlier. If you go to thislittlecorner.net and type in Trinity, you're saying nothing will come up because no one speaks about the Trinity. You know that's a lie. They speak about the Trinity all the time. They just don't speak about the Trinity in the way that you'd like to. Sam's entire channel is dedicated to the Trinity.
Yeah, he won't
It's-
talk to me though.
I wonder why, because you think Christianity is stupid and he's delusional.
Yeah, because he already says that the Trinitarians in the church that he takes his children to call him a heretic. So he
Again,
knows what they think of him.
you've just sidestep and you make a statement, I give you evidence against it, and you just move on to Sam. You're saying they don't talk about the Trinity. I said Sam talks about the Trinity, and then you talk about Sam, why Sam won't talk to you. This is all very self-indulgent. Like, what do you just go on the internet all day looking for people that will talk to you, and if they don't, keep looking for reasons why? Well, Christians more specifically. Like, do you still go to Speaker's Corner? Do you do this in real life as well?
I haven't been for months. And there are very few Christians anyway. Very few. I think that there's been some trouble with this Orthodox Muslim guy, but that's been online. But it was actually
Oh, yeah,
Leicester Square, not Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, I started watching Chris from Speaker's Corner's retelling of that and very quickly lost interest. But I'm glad Chris is okay and David's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any, anyone with a bloody face or anything like that, but,
Oh, that's exactly what it was. He had a bloody face.
okay. But none of the videos I saw showed it. I think you had to pay somebody's Patreon in order to see it, and I couldn't be bothered.
That's well, according to Chris's telling of it, and well, he showed the video, so it's not just his telling of it. He says the Muslim channels aren't showing. They've edited it in a way to mitigate the violence that they were committing and to fit their narrative. But that's Chris's narrative. Nonetheless, so you've not been to Speaker's Corner in a while, and you've mostly been testing your ideas out on the internet. Who's been your most productive conversation partner yet? How was your conversation with Khalid?
I'm fine. He's well, I can't remember anything that he said that you might be interested in. He says his usual things that Christians don't really believe, and they don't really do what they need to do, which is to marry, have children. But I did assure him that the people in the TLC were married, married parents, and trying to do well by their children, and they were the group that he keeps talking about, the ones who never marry, who aren't in a relationship. So that was something I cleared up. Khalid did attempt to talk to. I think he did appear in one of Paul Vanderklay's Friday streams, but that was a long time ago. But we all know that Paul Vanderklay is only going to take his information from Islamophobes like Dominic Sandbrook, Tom Holland, and Douglas Murray. So and there's no Muslim there, right? I'm not even Muslim, and I get such a hard time already.
Do you know? Yeah, you probably wouldn't. Michael's a Muslim that's TLC adjacent, probably the most knowledgeable Muslim that's TLC adjacent that I know. But he mostly
Michael,
engages.
I don't think I know him. I
Yeah,
don't think I know a Michael.
that's.
I haven't bumped into him.
I think I was informed that you were invited into the Discord server that he's a part of. Anyway, point is that
I'm banned. I'm banned from Jacobs and
no, this is not
Richardson.
Jacob's. This is Marcher's Discord. Or it was Marcher's, not Nico's Discord. But point is, do you with Khaled makes me think of the fact that to most Muslims, Khalid isn't considered a Muslim. Did that come up in your conversation with him?
Well, I already know that.
And
I already know that Ahmadis are considered heretics.
but they're not Trinitarian, so they get a pass. Is
Well, yeah, I mean, the Unitarian God is, if you're going to believe in God, the most logical God to believe in, because, if he said the universe was created not by one, but 2, 3 gods, then, it will be like, well, how do you know? Were you there? Occam's razor and everything.
How did you come to knowledge of the Trinity? Were you raised in a Christian household?
No, I wasn't. But I do. My parents are Buddhist, Taoist. But I do have Christian members of my extended family. But I mean, Christianity is a peculiar religion. I guess once I started studying Islam, I studied I mean, I was interested in religion and politics, so I guess I absorbed all that information
And
by osmosis.
And you were convinced by the probability of the monotheist religion over your Buddhist Taoist upbringing? Or did you just from the beginning have the right? Sounds quite liberal to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say, because I have Christian members of my extended family, I guess, we were, that strict. But I guess I'm interested in organized religion because, we already know that the organized religions are the Abrahamic religions, and the Abrahamic religions are, higher status than the Eastern religions of Hinduism and Buddhism because they have, more empire.
So it's just the pragmatic, similar Petersonian way of coming to truth. Pragmatic, which one has been most
Yes,
successful empires they've.
Yeah. So I mean, what's interesting is that these Christians with their global empire on their third global empire, and these Muslims, they're always complaining about Jews. So I guess Jews remain the most high status religious group, even though their numbers are small.
Okay, but in terms of empire, so you're saying the Jews are the exception that proves the rule of empire being evidence of successful religion?
Well, actually, the Jews can't do anything without the cooperation and support of a powerful Gentile empire. So before the Christians took, actually, the Christians and Muslims have been fighting each other over the Holy Land since the Crusades. So, and I guess the fight is not yet over.
Okay, that's a different point. Your thesis is that empire and the success of empires is good evidence of which religion is worth paying attention to. Therefore, the Christian and the Muslim are worth paying attention to just because of the success of the empire. However, the Jews don't really have a big empire to point back to outside of King David and Solomon, obviously since then. So but their success is how they manage to absurd or use the whichever empire is in charge demands the status.
You're
Is
roboting
that
again.
your thesis?
You're,
Oh dear.
you're roboting a bit. I just thought I'd mention that. I think you're asking me if I think the Jews are somehow responsible for the mess. I actually don't think
No,
so. I think
nothing that crude. Sorry, that's not what I was asking. I'm trying to understand your motivation for paying attention to the Islamic religion, and you motivation is of the empire. Jews don't have an empire, so what's your motivation for the Jews?
the Jews just fall in line with whatever the American empire does, because empire is also a job creation scheme for politicians and businesses and all kinds of things. So yes, it does have advantages once it's established and powerful, and and obviously it should be obvious that Israel is really an American colony, but I mean the narrative is
Wait,
that.
hold on. Let's not go into J-Berg too quickly. I'm still trying to understand your interest in religion and your thesis of empire being the way a way of determining which religion is at least worth paying attention to and maybe even subscribing to.
Mhm.
Because by that you're saying that Christianity is kaput because the Christianity is no longer the religion of the empire of the thesis. And instead, it's
Well, because
liberalism.
yes, even if Christianity is still officially the most numerous religious group, the fact is a lot of people calling themselves Christian don't really believe in it, and also Christianity is divided into sects. So
You were just speaking
there
to
is no
Ahmadiyya.
real unity. Pardon?
You were just speaking to Ahmadiyya Muslim. And you're talking to me about sects.
Yeah, well, I mean, Muslims also have sects, and so do Jews have different sects.
Exactly. So that's not
But
valid.
officially,
One of them have sects.
well, but if you want to compare these different Abrahamic religions, you would have to say that Christianity, according to Pew Research anyway, has more people in their group than Muslims, right? I mean, those are the statistics.
Yeah, for now.
And it is still the religion of the most powerful empire in the world.
Okay, wait. So it is the religion of the most powerful empire in the world. So you do. Okay, so you're with the Christian nationalists.
Well, no.
Is that not their thesis?
Just because I acknowledge that a religious group is the biggest
Yeah,
and supposedly the most
that's all I
powerful.
meant. That's all I meant, that you're with them, as in you both agree on that point, not that you are a Christian nationalist.
No, well, I'm not Christian, but I am a nationalist, because I don't think
For which nation?
Christianity.
For America?
Well, well, actually, for any country, because if you,
So you're
as
a
a
globalist.
nation, want.
If
Well,
you're a
I could
nationalist for
be,
more
but
than one country, you're a globalist.
no, I'm saying, if you will let me make my point, which and it is that it would be in the national interest if you're a nationalist, and you know that your moral system is no longer working. You have to choose the best one. You have to choose the best one available. And I'm saying it's easy to work out which is the best one available. It's not Judaism, because most of humanity, in fact 99% of humanity, are Gentiles, and Jews are finding it difficult to remain Jewish. So it's between Christianity and Islam, right? And you could say that Christianity is still the religion of the most powerful empire in the world, except that it is an empire in decline. And then we have to ask ourselves, why is it in decline? And why is it so desperate to start World War III?
What about the Muslim Empire? What's going on there? Why is that? Why did that go into decline?
Because they didn't follow the Quran properly. Because caliphs should not be kings. And there were only 4 rightly guided caliphs. They went wrong where they became absolute monarchs.
Okay, so that's another one that's gone wrong. Christianity has gone wrong, but you focus on the way in which Christianity has gone wrong more than the way in which Islam has gone wrong. Why?
Because it's the most important one, right? The West is the one that is declining and about to start World War III. So let's concentrate on the most important and dangerous one.
Russia? No, yeah, the West is. So it's all political.
Probably
It's
politics
not
and religion are the same. Sorry,
Okay,
I didn't hear
so
that.
that's why you keep struggling with Christians, because you politics are the same. You've got reasons why you think that, but people don't like politics. There's
You're
religion
robotic.
in a sense.
I'm afraid I can't.
Did you catch the last thing?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm seeing circles
No.
indicating I'm speaking when I'm not. I'm going to wait till that stops happening.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a few
Yeah, I think
people have arrived.
Really? Who are they? What are they saying?
So, Living the Dream says, are you pretending to not understand the concept of the Trinity, or can you really not get your head around it? I'm not pretending not to understand the Trinity. I have solved the mystery of the Trinity. If you will look in my Substack. Pick and Choose says, where does China fit into this idea? What idea? And then Pick and Choose says, I'm a lifelong Christian in every possible way I've ever been able to halfway wrap my head around. The Trinity is apparently heresy, and I'm sure I'm not alone among Christians. So, I mean, the whole point of the Trinity is that you're not supposed to ask about it. You're just supposed to blindly believe in it, or else be burned at the stake under your absolute monarch. And when this practice ceased, before 80 years was up, the American Revolution broke out. So that's what you really need to do in order to make sure your subjects adopt your religion.
But you're saying that that's not working.
What isn't working?
Christianity being the religion of the most powerful empire, because the empire is now in decline. So,
well, it's still officially. Well, I mean, don't Westerners think of themselves as Christian if they think of having any religion
I'm trying
at
to
all?
understand what you think. Do you think Westerners are Christians or they're not? Because sometimes you make arguments that says that they are, other times you make arguments that says that they're not.
Well, because it depends on which Westerner I speak to,
Okay.
but I'm sure
Generalize.
whether they're Christian or liberal, they would say that liberalism is part of the West, and so is Christianity. That's what they'd say.
And what do you say?
Well, yeah, I mean that is what they think they are, liberals or Christians.
No, liberals.
or a bit of both,
Yeah.
like Mark Parker.
And you're saying that the Christianity is part of the reason why the West is in decline and it needs to adopt a new worldview.
Yes, because actually Christendom ended in 1918. If you accept
Someone
that
should
Christendom,
tell the churches because they're still going for some reason. But yeah,
tell who? What?
tell the believers. Again, when you say Christendom, you mean the political Christianity, but that's not Christianity.
No. Well, okay, I was going to define Christendom for you because I'm very keen on defining terms. Christendom means a Europe of Christian kingdoms. That's the short form for, all Christian monarchs, absolute monarchies in Europe. And that was a long time ago, because in 1918, 3 of them came to an end. The Austrian and German emperor had to abdicate, and the Russian Tsar was killed. He was a victim of regicide and he was killed along with the rest of his family because the Russians thought, well, we can't just kill a king because there might be a restoration, because when the English killed their king, there was a restoration after 10 years of republicanism, and even the French revolutionaries, even France had a restoration, and the Red Guards in Russia were determined not to have a restoration, so they exterminated the entire Russian royal family. And China also got rid of its monarchy in 1911. Oh, was it, Dale?
I'm trying to follow the point you make about the end of Christendom. Are you tying Christendom to the end of monarchies and saying that?
Yes.
Okay. And that means what? That America is not a Christian, so the empire isn't for Are you saying, again, this is what I mean by you say that Christians, the empire is, the West is Christian, and you say the West is not Christian. So if Christendom ended with the end of the monarchies, what is America? Just liberal without?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned America, because America cannot be part of Christendom because it's a republic. So this is a very important question for Americans to ask themselves. Right? Christianity, after its Atlantic crossing, took a different form.
You're not very good at staying on track of a topic here, but maybe that's because there's a wider frame that you're working from that I just don't have access to. But to nationalist, you said you're a nationalist, but all I hear you talk about is America, even though you're not American.
Well, you may remember hearing Yoav Bresler saying that Jews try to influence American politics in order to influence their own politics. You don't have to be Jewish to know that America rules the world. And if you want anything to change, you have to start with America, because our politicians in Europe take orders directly from Washington. That's what they do.
There's a beef for it, isn't there? Trump currently a threat. But like you say you're nationalist. It sounds like you're more for politics and not time up here. I think that's unfair. I'm not being unfair because I've never heard you talk about politics, because America, you're more focused on the empire. So you're not a nationalist.
You might as well go right to the top. I'll tell you, I don't know why your audio is so terrible.
I'm sorry. This has been good. I do have to get. I had a bit of time, so I thought I'll indulge.
Well, thank you for coming.
No problem.
Well, thank you for coming. I do appreciate your questions, and you did ask a very good question. Maybe so. So before I go, I should answer the question that I think Tail asked about why I'm so concentrated on America if I'm a nationalist. And I'm saying, if the interests of your own country is controlled by Washington, then you would have to take an interest in what goes on in Washington. And what we know about America is that it does not have an official religion. It's just a whole bunch of people claiming to be Christian. And the problem with Christianity is that it has no principles. And this is what I have discovered through talking to various members of the TLC. To the extent that they have any principle, they would say, we have to love our neighbor as ourselves and love God with all our might and all our heart and blah, blah, blah. And that I don't think is enough. We need to know what the rules are. And if we are in the religious group that has divine revelation, then we should follow the laws of God contained in divine revelation. Unfortunately, we have two divine revelations, the Torah and the Quran. And I'm saying, obviously, follow the Quran because it supports the First Amendment with chapter 2, verse 256, while we know that Jews and Christians, when they took their religion seriously, did not believe in anything like the First Amendment, because idolatry and blasphemy attract the death penalty for Jews, and it is two of the 36 capital offences as codified by Maimonides. And we also know that heretic burning was a Christian practice. And although the practice ceased in 1697, when Thomas Aikenhead was executed, he was hanged for denying the Trinity. The fact that before 80 years was up, the American Revolution broke out is evidence of the weight of oppression needed to keep Europeans Christian. So if you want to blame anyone for the extinction of Christendom, we have to blame America, because I think we can deduce that after the Americans started to enjoy their First Amendment rights, the rest of Europe wanted it. And we know that the French Revolution was quickly followed the American Revolution. And we know that, we would know if we go to Paris and see a few statues of liberty, but on a smaller scale, that the French and American revolutions were linked. In fact, the King of France sponsored the American Revolutionary Wars. And after the French king bankrupted himself through sponsoring the American Revolutionary Wars, he had to be the victim of the French Revolution. And then there were the Napoleonic Wars, and then the wars of national unification in Europe. And then World War I and World War II, it's war. And I think I can easily prove to anyone asking that all the sufferings of Europe in these terrible wars of the Reformation, etc., could have been avoided if they were all following Sharia. So that's my point, and if you don't want to suffer anymore, there is a simple solution of considering adopting Sharia or the Sharia light of secular Quranism. And if you think I'm just a silly woman with a silly idea, please Please engage with me and tell me how and why I'm being so silly. I think my theory could work if implemented. And that's all I want, just some honest and intelligent engagement. Okay, now I will read the comments. Okay, I don't know what you mean. Living the dream. Video queer aside, not that it didn't depart from the Nicene Creed. Well, I mean, there's so many interpretations of the Nicene Creed, aren't there? Yeah, the meaning crisis. What does the meaning crisis? Look, it's an atheism crisis. When you say meaning crisis, I can imagine all these atheists saying, what's the meaning of our lives? What is the nature of our lives? What is the purpose of our lives? But ethical monotheists would be ready with the explanation that the nature and purpose of our lives is to pass a test, to show that we know the difference between good and evil in theory and in practice, entitling us to admission to heaven. That would be the purpose of our lives if you believe in the afterlife and the Abrahamic God. Pick and Choose says, the Trinity makes prayer difficult too. Hard to choose which person to train your mind on and address. Well, I mean, to be fair, the Lord's Prayer, you don't have to think of Jesus, do you? Do you think of Jesus when you recite the Lord's Prayer? I suppose some of you think of Jesus as Lord, but you could think of, the Lord, who isn't a crucified blasphemer saying that his papa is God. Yon God says, it's fun to imagine the Trinity, which is actually a quad, like 3D plus 1 space-time. The noun is the Father, the adjective is the Son, the verb is the Holy Spirit, and the adverb is God. It's a bit confusing. I suppose you're supposed to think of it as, okay, here's my conception of the Trinity, should it exist. So, well, you see, you're not meant to anthropomorphize God, but people can't help it. People with very little imagination, they will always think God is a human with superpowers. So I'm afraid they think God is like a Marvel superhero, right? That this is, or God is like themselves, always agreeing with themselves, but who is immortal and, omniscient and perfectly moral and always agrees with them. So you really need this distinction between the creator and creation. And I think even scientists acknowledge that the universe is a creation of the Big Bang. And I suppose theists would say, we know who caused the Big Bang, it was God. And scientists would have to say, well, we have no empirical evidence of this. But back to my imagining of this Trinity thing. So there are these three things, and I guess you can think of God as someone like Father Time with a long beard, or Zeus, also has a white beard, and then of course the Son is Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is somebody with a sheet over himself, like Casper, with two holes in the middle. I mean, and then when you think of God, you might just think of all three, and you don't try to visualize them. At the moment you try to visualize it, then it would be, whichever you're thinking of. It might be man on a beard on a cross, or man with long white beard, that's like Zeus or Marx, and then Casper the Friendly Ghost, something like that, depending on who you're thinking of and which one you think of first. So that would be my conception of the Trinity. But of course, it's all wrong, because you're not supposed to conceive of God as in any way physical or material, if you will but refer to the third principle of Judaism. Yes, but pick and choose. Catholics have lost the wars of the Reformation. I know a lot of, very nice Protestant people are saying we can't lord it over the Catholics and remind them who won the wars of the Reformation. After all, it's the Episcopalians that control the most territory under one British monarch. They don't want to talk about things like that because it's a bit offensive and triumphalist, and it might make the Australians, Canadians, and New Zealanders think of republicanism, so they don't want to talk about it. Right, they don't want to talk about it. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned in the beginning was the word thing. So what does word mean? I know word does mean, it's used sometimes to say, I agree, when somebody says something you agree with and you say word. But okay, I happen to have a Bible in front of me and I can read the book of John. Because, there's obviously a very specialized meaning of the word word, the meaning of the word word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. I would say word in this context means idea. In the beginning was the idea. The idea was with God, who is the biggest idea of all. And the biggest idea was God. There you go. I've just solved your philosophical problem by filling in the blanks for you. You should acknowledge my genius. You pick and choose. You're Catholic, so I guess you're accustomed to worshipping Mary. But honestly, it's anthropomorphism, and anthropomorphism is idolatry. Please try and remember, because if God exists, then you're guilty of a mortal sin. So Jan God says, God really should have a wife. You have Mormon characteristics, don't you, to make more sense. God, the mother, husband of Christ. Sheesh. Well, no, you don't want God to be like a man, because then you'll have a wife, and the wife might be a nagging wife, and he might have a daughter, and the daughter might elope with some, lower class man. So, come on, just stop making God a man. It's idolatry. And okay, I mean, obviously the atheists don't care, but it's a mental discipline that should be attempted. Is China a successful atheist empire? That's a good question. I think China has tried to keep itself in existence, as you would expect. So I suppose it's doing okay. It's still in existence. It's been around roughly the same length of time as the Jews, so it's not too bad. Okay, have I come to the last comment? It's a revealed nature of God. I have looked into Trinitarianism. I have already solved the mystery of the Trinity, and I suppose I need to send you the link to my Substack. Mystery of the Trinity solved by yours truly. Mystery of the Trinity solved by yours truly. There. It's the revealed nature of God. What would you do about the revealed nature of God? Oh, you're saying that the Trinity is a revealed nature of God. Well, it's explicitly stated to be what Christians are supposed to worship. All right, I have been speaking for 2 hours. But I do appreciate Taya for looking in and asking his questions. They were quite intelligent questions, even if I could barely make out what he was saying because he was roboting so badly. But I am directing my efforts to Americans because I think they must be the people closest to doing anything about their government because they are American. It's certainly not people in Europe or Asia or anywhere else. It's got to be the American people who I hoped would be more skilled in moral and legal reasoning, but no, they just want to pray. Yes, I know the Bible anthropomorphizes God, and so does the Quran. But perhaps that's unavoidable, and perhaps that can be excused or explained by, well, if God is omnipotent, then God can use a few metaphors, can't he? But the point is, we're not supposed to think of him as in any way like us, with arms and fingers and head and heart, and he's, because if you keep doing that, you will end up worshipping yourself. You will end up thinking that God is someone like you, but with superpowers, who always agrees with you. And that would be a very dangerous way of thinking. And it does appear that a lot of members of the Western ruling classes seem to think that. But yes, Americans are very important because it is their constitution and their history that is key to understanding why America, as a Christian nation, is coming to an end, because the intention of the founding fathers was to distance themselves from Christianity. And of course, in those times, they couldn't have said they were Muslim. Not that I'm claiming that they were Muslims who were, secretly doing their prostrations and that kind of thing, because fundamentally Islam is a concept. It's not putting on a show for you. It's all legal concepts, and it's a very slimline kind of moral system, because it's just saying you don't need to create a priesthood for me, because I'm not supposed to work in an absolute monarchy. It is Christianity that is supposed to defend the divine right of kings, and Islam is just meant to give humanity their unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. So I think it would be helpful to reconstitute the American Constitution, but with as few changes as possible. So I would like to change the pursuit of happiness to pursuit of justice. Just that word. In we can put all kinds of footnotes and whatever. But I think it's important for Americans to no longer pursue happiness, but to pursue justice. And they would end up being happier people if they pursued justice. And if they did pursue justice, they would care about the rules. That's what would happen naturally. And therefore I urge Americans to pursue justice rather than their own subjective ideas of happiness, which has landed them in hot water. Ancestor worship. Are we talking about ancestor worship now? Pick and choose? No, you're not supposed to. Okay, I know the Chinese used to worship their ancestors, but it wasn't really about work. Okay, I did write a post about that. And really, the system of ancestor worship is really meant to frighten Chinese couples into marrying and staying together and having legitimate children and parenting them properly under the principles of Confucianism. And the heir and the spare thing is very important, because really the whole belief system of Chinese ancestor worship was to say, this is how it's supposed to be. When you're dead, you can either be a worshipped ancestor or a hungry ghost. And we don't want to be a hungry ghost, do we, Chinese people? No. It's lower status than a worshipped ancestor. So you would always want to be a worshipped ancestor if you can. And of course, you can only be a worshipped ancestor if you marry and have children and have sons to perform the tomb sweeping ceremony every spring. Because if it's a daughter, if it's a female descendant, it doesn't count, and you'll be a hungry ghost. And that would be sad for you. So keep on pumping them out, these, with an heir and a spare. So that was really what created the natalism, the pro-natalism of China and really most traditional societies. They saw that in the end it's a numbers game. Yes, you you can have, wonderful culture and a wonderful technocracy, but, if you don't produce the next generation or parent them properly, they will just not be up to, remaining in existence, and your group will become extinct, like the ancient Egyptians and, all the other ones, the Aztecs and all the rest of it. So you just have to practice marriage, which is a eugenic practice, because marriage is the most expensive form of sex, and not all men can afford it. Not all men are marriageable. Not all women are marriageable. And if you have marriage as the ideal, or as the kind of first step towards becoming a worshipped ancestor, then you would make people want to marry and want to have children, and want to properly parent their children, and then of course you can shame people, right? You're going to shame them if they don't manage to get married. What's wrong with you? Are you gay? You'll be a hungry ghost the moment you pop your clogs. You only have daughters. You'll be a hungry ghost the moment you pop your clogs. You have lots of children, but they're all bastards. Oh, you'll be a hungry ghost when you pop your clogs. Oh dear, poor you. So there you go. They don't even have to believe in it. They just know the story, and they can shame you before you're even dead. And you will be shamed. All right? This is how it's supposed to work. All right. No more comments. 5 people watching. I've made my point about Chinese ancestor worship. Oh, I should find you my blog post. And you might find of interest. I mean, it basically repeats what I've said, but I'm quite pleased with it because it had lots of hits. And a few pictures, which you might find of interest. So you see, these belief systems are somehow used to keep your group in existence, right? And it's necessary to keep your group in existence if you care about this sort of thing. And then you can shame people who don't care for these things. You can say, well, you a nihilist, you don't care what happens to your society after you're dead. Oh dear, well, we'll see that no decent woman will have anything to do with you. So even the nihilists will have to pretend to have principles, right? And then they will be held to their declared principles, even though they didn't sincerely hold them. So this is how it's supposed to work, boys and girls. It doesn't have to be Christianity, but obviously Christianity. Okay. The question that people didn't ask me is this: why did God allow Christians to prosper and acquire 3 whole global empires if he didn't agree with their idolatry and their blasphemy and he ate Jesus? Why would he allow such a terrible thing to happen? And the answer is that when the 3rd Christian empire collapses, Islam will just move into the vacuum. It will move into the moral vacuum. Because nature abhors a vacuum. And Christianity is a moral vacuum. And if we believe in God, or would like to, We have to believe that God is benevolent and is trying to help us with these rules. So you can say all these laws of God, they're just safety rails to make sure, we don't ski too far off piste and hurt ourselves or even kill ourselves. So that's what these rules are for. And that sounds fair enough to me. And not only has he given us his laws, he's given us two versions, like two whole versions of his laws. And if we're Gentiles, it's obvious that the Torah is not for us, and we already know it's too hard even for the Jews to follow. So we've got to have the easy version, and that's the Quran. The one that supports the First Amendment, with chapter 2, verse 256 of which says there is no compulsion in belief, truth stands clear from error, and that's why I call the Founding Fathers proto-Muslim no-hinds, wishing to erect a wall between absolute monarchy supported by Christianity and their constitutional republic. And I hope 21st century Americans will finally see sense and the manifest destiny of their exceptional and indispensable nation for acknowledging the supremacy of the Quran as the best available guide to humanity. Thank you for your attention.